Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's time for the Brown Sports Bag from the Heart of the Barrens, a weekly local sports machine on ESPN Radio 1230. Alongside John Butler, here's your host, James Brown.
John, we're back again this week, and we're going to start out by talking a little bit about the NFL draft, and then we're going to get into some high school baseball, high school softball.
Coaching changes.
It's carousel season for high school coaches, and I guess it's past college coach carousel season.
April is normally not a real comfortable month in high school coaching.
Yeah, that's when you get the slips that let you know whether or not you get to teach again next year, and then that's probably what kicks off the carousel more than anything else these days.
That's true.
But first of all, we're going to talk about the NFL draft. Thursday night, myself and Brian Webb and Chris Bratcher, who people can hear on The Point and The Edge, and Garrett Browning, who does a lot of stuff over in the Bowling Green ESPN studios. We hung out at Buffalo Wild Wings and did a draft coverage.
Not in Nashville.
No, we did not brave the 600,000 people down there.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, 500,000 human masses just roaming the streets of Nashville.
Thursday, Friday, and Saturday.
Yeah.
If you think Nashville has traffic trouble on normal days, I'd say it would have been a nightmare.
Well, they basically had the whole downtown blocked off, right?
Kind of like Derby.
Yeah, kind of like the Derby. You know, you couldn't drive your car down there. You had to park somewhere and walk. I'm guessing they probably had ways to transport you in.
They got rave reviews, though.
Yeah. I think I was looking. It's the second or third highest second highest count maybe for an NFL draft since they started this carousel of locations. And I think maybe New Orleans was number one, or they may have even beat New Orleans out. I mean, which is just an amazing thing. I mean, people just go to New Orleans by accident. You know, they didn't even show up. When you go to New Orleans, people don't even necessarily, it doesn't have to be the draft. There are already 500,000 visitors in New Orleans on any given good weekend. So, you know, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I think Nashville, I mean, whether or not the experience was, I don't know. I can just tell you the perception was, and all the reviews were, they did a great job.
Yeah. Now, for the draft itself, you know, for the most part, there were no real surprises. I mean, Cliff Kingsbury got the job, and for the Cardinals, and then basically he never said who he's going to take, but it was not hard to read who he's going to take. I would say the fact that Kingsbury got that Cardinals job probably even influenced Kyler Murray deciding to go ahead and jump in the NFL draft, because he probably felt pretty confident he was going to be the number one overall pick.
I agree. I mean, he fits their system perfectly. He recruited him out of high school to come to Texas Tech. He didn't go there, went to Texas A&M, then transferred to Oklahoma. But yeah, I mean, I don't think the experiment is going to be with Kyler Murray. I think the experiment is going to be with the coach.
Yeah.
I mean, he's going to bring that. And everybody today, I mean, a lot of those college coaches today run the spread and they throw it 40, 50 times. Not like this guy, Kingsbury. I mean, he throws it 60, 70 times sometimes. Yeah. So it's even unique for the college world. And moving up to the NFL, it'd be really interesting to see how he adapts and how the league adapts to him.
Yeah. You know, I feel like they'll be really excited with him for at least a year. And I mean, I feel like that the Cardinals are just not going to win football games, though, because that style does not pan out in the NFL. There's so many obstacles and so many differences when you get down to the brass tacks of the game itself.
Well, it is Arizona, so they don't have a whole lot of NFL buzz.
Yeah.
So this is going to bring a little buzz to it. So we'll see.
Yeah.
I think they're in arguably the toughest division in football.
Right.
They're in there with Seattle and with San Francisco, that I think is really on the rise again, and with the Los Angeles Rams. So it's you know, they got to find their own niche. And, you know, maybe this is going to be their niche. We'll see what happens.
And speaking of San Francisco, they had the second pick, and they took Nick Bosa, defensive end of Ohio State. So he'll be meeting Kyler Murray probably frequently.
Yeah, I mean, that wasn't surprised. I mean,
No.
He was consensus top 3 or 4 pick. His brother is all-pro with the Chargers, too, by the way.
Yeah, and his dad played in the NFL.
Miami.
Yep. And so then the Giants took Quinnen Williams, defensive tackle out of Alabama.
Jets.
And the Oakland Raiders took Clelin Ferrell, defensive end from Clemson. I don't know. I thought of the 3 defensive linemen that could go in the first round for Clemson, I think he was the one that was not expected to go first. I think maybe he was expected to go second. But it was just kind of whatever. And then the Buccaneers, they took Devin White, linebacker out of LSU, and then we get to, I guess, the shocker. The New York Giants took quarterback Daniel Jones out of Duke. To me, that seemed like an obvious pick, strangely enough, but just because of the circular relationship between the Manning family and Eli and David Cutcliffe, who was Daniel Jones's college coach. And they don't necessarily need a quarterback to start immediately. Now, is it kind of what I would say typical Giants right now, that of an organization that doesn't seem to headed in the right direction? Probably so. Seems
a little odd. It's my if you can do this, it was my favorite pick, most admired pick, and I thought it was the worst one. I admire the pick because they clearly went against what everybody else was saying, so they were firm in their convictions. And they just, this is a guy they wanted, and they went out and got that. And if it works out, they stood by what they believed in.
Yeah. They knew they needed a quarterback, but not next year.
I know nothing about Daniel Jones.
Yeah.
Really, I mean, I did not watch one throw that he made at Duke.
He was the whole Duke offense.
And I'm not going to sit here and criticize Daniel Jones like he's been just vilified on TV and on radio. Mm-hmm. This is the worst of all time, and I think a lot of mean things were said about him, from a lot of people that know nothing really about it. I mean, how many people? I mean, there's Mel Kiper and the GMs. I mean, they know, but a lot of people are just kind of like hot bags on the air, and they don't know anything about Daniel Jones. They just talk, and so I don't know anything about it. What I say could be the worst pick. It just seems like they could have had a Josh Allen or somebody else and got Daniel Jones later.
Yeah.
It just didn't seem like there was a ton of people fighting over Daniel Jones, and I just had to have him. So that, oftentimes with these drafts, it's about value. Even in fantasy football, it's about value. You may want somebody, but the question is, could you got somebody else and your person if you just kind of waited?
Yeah.
And it seems like there was a little bit of a reach. And what's the bad thing with Daniel Jones, when they picked him 6th, he's going to be under enormous pressure.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people think he's a bum and can't play anyway. And there's more pressure when you're 6th than, say, you're the 31st pick, or even the 17th pick would have been more reasonable, in my opinion.
I think this about the situation. I think there was some discussion that 2 other teams were interested in picking up a quarterback in the first round, the Redskins and the Broncos. Mm-hmm. And there were other quarterbacks available, but this was a thin quarterback draft. And always there's a guy in these NFL drafts that's kind of like the sleeper, that somebody's going to pick them and you're going to go, huh? And they're high on somebody's draft board. And to me, what I think, the Giants may have been wrong about this. I mean, who knows? To your point, they may have been able to get him whenever, because they did also have the 17th pick. But I'm guessing that they, like you said, he was their man. And here's another thing. Basically, to me, they don't have to change anything. He can be the backup quarterback in the offensive system they have, because I think they basically run the same.
He does. He fits. He looks and kind of. He's a better athlete than actually Eli Manning. He's not a bad athlete at all. That's another kind of misnomer. I mean, he ran for over 100-something yards one game, so he has got some athleticism. And I'm sure he's a good player. I mean, it's Duke does not have wide receivers and talent like Clemson and so forth. So I'm sure that I have no doubt he's a really good player.
Yeah.
If you're drafted at that level, there's only so many people that can throw the football like these NFL quarterbacks. So there's no question. It's just like I said, I thought it was probably arguably a reach.
Yeah.
And I hope it works out for him, because he has been, I think, unfairly vilified.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Now, here's one thing that I think did work out, and this worked out in Josh Allen's favor. The Giants probably should have taken Josh Allen, because they have been most successful with a good defense when they've won Super Bowls. I mean, Eli Manning's made plays or whatever.
A good linebacker that can rush, like Lawrence Taylor.
Yeah, and Josh Allen fits that mold.
Sure does, yep.
But I think this worked out better for Josh Allen, because I think Jacksonville's a better fit for him than if he had gone to the Giants. The Jacksonville Jaguars, they were a good team, and then last year they struggled. They had injuries.
Bad quarterback.
They got to fix that situation, but their defense was strong, and Josh Allen just makes it better. And I think this works out as a better circumstance for him because he just plugs right in for what they do, I think.
Well, generally, when you fall in the draft, you're falling toward a better team.
Yeah.
You know, the worst teams draft early unless they got a trade for some reason.
Right. So, I mean, to me, it looks like this just works out as the best deal for Josh Allen in this draft. I'm not sure he wanted to go higher.
Big day for Kentucky.
Yeah, it was.
They had, I think, 5 players drafted, 4 on defense and an offense. No, I'm sorry, 3 on defense and 2 offensive linemen.
Yep.
I'm sorry, 3 on defense and 2 offensive players. Benny Snell, one of them.
Yeah.
So 5. I don't think Louisville or Western had any.
No, they did not.
And Louisville's had, that's really surprising for both. Western and Louisville have had top picks, better picks than Kentucky in the last 5 years.
Yeah, which it kind of mirrors the seasons they had this past year.
That's exactly right.
Because there probably is some talent on those teams. It's just that the shape of the programs themselves probably tainted the picks, I would say. So we may have players that end up from those programs making it okay in the NFL or doing fine in the NFL. It's just that these past seasons they didn't get nothing was shown about what they were capable of doing.
Well, it's the best year for Kentucky and maybe ever.
Could be.
In terms of being drafted.
Yeah.
Maybe the Peach Bowl champions back in 1970, whatever, 6 or whatever. I think they had several. And the last time Kentucky made this big news is when Tim Couch was drafted number 1 to Cleveland.
Yeah.
So, and it showed with their record last year.
It did.
Kentucky was, had the best team they've had in years and defeated Penn State in a January 1st day. So, congratulations. It's a big day.
Well, and speaking about things going well for somebody, it seems to me Benny Snell going to the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think in the 4th round.
That's a great place.
Yes, it's a great place for him because they like their running backs.
They like their running backs, and they just lost. Bell just signed with the Jets.
Yep.
So it's not like there's established people in his way.
Mm-hmm.
The guy that replaced Bell last year had a good year, but he's it's a good place because Pittsburgh traditionally is run oriented. Mm-hmm. They've been throwing it a lot lately, but I still think that he fits Pittsburgh's profile.
Yeah,
tough kid, tough runner, and
mm-hmm.
I think he will fit in real well in that division in particular.
Yeah, and then another little thing that happened. The Patriots picked up 2 former youth football teammates. Damian Harris, he played the last few years at Alabama. Mm-hmm. He's from Madison Southern, I think is where he went.
Yeah.
And then they also picked up Jarrett Stidham, who's the Auburn quarterback. He's originally from Richmond, Kentucky.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they played. There's a picture on Twitter that the Richmond Register had. They played youth football together in 2002.
Okay, I got it.
So they're reunited now, but I thought that was pretty good place for Damian Harris as well.
I guess. I mean, the Patriots, I don't question anything they do. I mean, they're never drafting. They rarely even draft in the first round.
Yeah.
And they seem to do quite well with finding players that didn't have a lot of hype. They like players who are multidimensional. What I've read, they like college graduates.
Yes.
They like smart players who are very adaptable and so forth. I think Damian Harris has been there 4 years at Alabama. Yep. So has the quarterback at Auburn.
Yep.
Transferred in. And so they like players who can do multiple things. And like I said, I don't question anything New England does. It seems like they whatever they do, they've figured it out.
Speaking of the Patriots, they had the last pick in the first round, and they took N'Keal Harry, who is a wide receiver from Arizona State. And I think I was reading that this is the first wide receiver they've taken in the first round in basically 20 years.
That's normally what they know.
Bill Belichick.
That's correct.
So they must think he's pretty good.
I guess, yeah, they did. I mean, and there was several good receivers on the board, but they went with him again. I would assume he's got great hands, versatile, and smart.
Yeah,
I'm just guessing.
So, out of in the first round, what was your favorite pick there? You think
Daniel Jones?
Yeah.
Not because I think it's the right pick. It's my favorite pick just because it took conviction to do so, even though I think they're probably wrong. It's just I like the conviction that they showed, and I hope he proves them completely wrong. I really do. I hope he proves them wrong.
Yeah,
because I don't like people being vilified over something that's out of your control.
Yeah, actually, the Giants' 17th pick, their second pick in the first round, which was pick 17, may be my favorite because they took Dexter Lawrence. And, I mean, I think fits kind of the mold of a guy who's just going to eat up the middle of the field. He may not be a long third down defensive lineman, but those first 2 downs, he's the kind of guy that's you're going to have to run the ball around him, or you're going to have to keep him off your quarterback. And, if they have any chance of becoming the Giants that they're used to being, that starts there, really.
Well, it was a good day for the SEC.
Yeah, it was.
64 people drafted, most in history.
Yeah.
And the ACC had real good, too. Several from, obviously, Clemson. Boston College had several.
Yeah,
I'm scratching
we were
my
having
head.
to look them up when they called them out. It's like, what, Boston College?
Yeah. Iowa had 2 tight ends drafted in the first round.
Yeah.
I mean, that's...
Yeah, the Falcons took Chris Lindstrom, the guard from Boston College, at pick 14. And and there was this shot of his face whenever he got the call. And he had this look on his face like, you mean me? You got the right Chris?
Yeah. Well, I mean, most people, unless you're just Mel Kiper and a specialist, I mean, most people don't know about linemen. I mean, that's just to be honest with you, they don't. I assume all of Alabamas are good,
right? Yeah.
But I mean, I was watching it on TV, and everybody they put up kind of looked the same.
Yeah.
And they always show a highlight where they're pancaking somebody, and they're all 6'5", 320.
Highlights for a reason.
Yeah. So it's hard to tell.
Well, then we had the Titans took Jeffrey Simmons, the defensive lineman from Mississippi State,
who may not play next year.
Who may not play because he had the ACL injury in February, and so he's recovering from that. And I tell you, here's what's surprising to me. I think Mississippi State had 5 defensive players taken.
They had back-to-back picks in 26th and the 27th.
Yeah, and I'm like, I didn't know their defense was that good. I guess, though, when you have to play in the SEC, sometimes your defense can look bad. But they must have some talented players.
I assume. I mean, they had three players in the first round.
Yeah, they had Montez Sweat taken by the Redskins and Jonathan. You're talking about the back-to-back. Jonathan Abram taken by the Raiders. That's picks 26 and 27. And I think that's probably what happens too. Alabama is just so dominant a program and so ubiquitous in terms of like the level of college football in the SEC, especially that a lot of SEC players, they're good players, and the good thing is the pro scouts get to look at them playing against each other.
Sure.
I mean, they're basically future pros playing against each other in so many slots in the SEC that they're willing, even if they don't turn out to be good, it's not a bad bet to take a gamble on some guys that you and I wouldn't know their names.
Well, yeah, I mean, I agree. And in fact, the Raiders had 3 first-round picks, and I believe they all, I may be wrong, but I think I'm right. 2 of the 3 came from the NCAA title game that they were scouting.
Right.
Clemson and Alabama.
I like him.
That's right.
Yeah, the only one that wasn't was the dude from Mississippi State. Yeah, it's like, oh, they look good.
Yeah.
So they believe in the eye test, I guess. Well, this is Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag on ESPN Radio 1230.
Well, John, there were some baseball games that got played last week. It was mostly a good week for the games, except Thursday, Friday, and even into Saturday, it was kind of not pleasant. It didn't really storm here, I think, like everybody expected it to on Thursday, but it was wet enough and just disruptive enough to kind of disrupt some weekend plans. But we'll just kick this off here. Barron County only won 1 game last week, the Trojans in baseball, but they were competitive in 2 other games against 2 usually good programs, against Franklin Simpson and Logan County. Probably most impressively was Logan County. I mean, they lost that game 3-1. Logan, they've got to be right there, considered to be one of the best teams in the 4th region this year. So I thought that was a pretty good week for them, at least in terms of we see some growth.
Yeah, I agree. They lost to Franklin 2-0.
Yep.
That's not a bad loss. Franklin, whose record's about even, knocked off the number 1 team in the state Saturday. They beat St. X.
Yeah.
So that wasn't bad. Logan lost 3-1, as you mentioned. Logan's good. And their win was a district win against Monroe, 13-2.
Yeah.
So, yeah, overall good. Justin Combs got the win against Monroe County, and so he's continuing to pitch well. Some of the injured pitchers, I think, are getting ready to go. Both Gillen and Coulter, I think, will be back this week.
Yeah.
So that part is good. And, the freshman pitcher, Bowie, his pitched well. Had a no-hitter once. Jamison, is it Bowie? I think. Yeah. He's kind of filled in. And Barron's 7-12, but I think it is an improving 7-12.
Yeah.
And they've got games. They played today at Greenwood versus Greenwood at home at 5:30. I'm going to go out there for that one. And they got Allen County tomorrow, a game they desperately need to win.
Yeah, and Allen County, which we'll get to this in a little bit, but Allen County knocked off Glasgow last week. Glasgow had not lost a game in the district, and then they lost to Allen County 6-4 last week. And so, and we know that Allen has a couple of kids, especially a pitcher who can beat you on any given day. They don't seem to have the depth this year that they usually
I never
have.
know about Allen.
Is that
in baseball-wise,
yeah.
Never know. And they seem like they always come up and they'll get a big win here or there. Mm-hmm. I mean, they've got a losing record, but they got the win last week against Glasgow 6-4. And a lot of the same kids that played in basketball, if you watch them play basketball, Brett Rippey and people like that, they play on the baseball team as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, and maybe that's part of the deal with Allen is they've got so many kids that wind up coming in out of the gym and that kind of stuff.
It may take them a while.
Yeah, to get warmed up because they do always seem to be a program that finishes the season pretty well.
I agree.
And even though Glasgow has the district lead at the moment, I mean, as we pointed out last year, the 4 teams finished 3-3. Now, it does seem this year that Monroe's a step behind everybody else, and maybe Glasgow's a step ahead at this point. And that may be the way it kind of shapes up. We'll have to see. Glasgow's
the only team with a winning record, I believe.
Yes, that is right.
Unless Monroe's 500, and I don't think they are.
Yeah, and so it's kind of shaping up that's the way it's going to be. But we do have a couple of weeks left we'll have a district games this week and next week. I know we still actually have like 3 weeks left in the season, but the districts are kind of wrapping up before that last week gets here, sort of like they do in basketball, and so. This week and next week, we'll have a clear picture of exactly how the district's going to be shaped up, who might be playing whom, and that kind of thing. And then Barron County, they like you mentioned, they host Greenwood today. I think that's a pretty good game for them. Greenwood is probably the third best team over in the 14th district so far.
Other than Warren Central, all 4 of them are good.
Yeah, and
they've not had a home game, I don't think, this year.
Greenwood. They've had their field had some issues, and they had to get it repaired. And so they did lose a series last week. I think the South Warren. I think they got swept actually in that series. And then the game against Allen tomorrow. Those will be good tests. Meanwhile, like I said, Glasgow dropped that district game against Allen last week. They mollywopped in Metcalfe County on Friday. I think the final was 19-5 where it was all said and done.
And lost to South Warren last week as well, 9-2.
Yeah, and
the Glasgow's 11-7 right now.
Yep. And then tomorrow they host Metcalfe County again today. Metcalfe they have a couple of pretty good players, and when those guys, one of them is on the mound, they're hard to beat. But I think depth-wise they're a little thin, as usually works out with Metcalfe. They just don't always have the most numbers. And then Glasgow has the district game against Monroe tomorrow. I'd say if they win that, I think they have the number 1 seed.
I agree. I think that's right. And they end the week with 2 good games. I think they got Franklin and Logan at the end of the week.
Yep. So we'll have a good idea what they look like when this week's over with in a lot of ways. Meanwhile, back out to broaden the picture out to the region a little bit. I'm not sure which team is the best in the region right now because I think South Warren is right there, Bowling Green is right there, Logan is right there, and as you mentioned, Franklin Simpson, they're 14-12 right now. But when I saw that score with St. X from the weekend, I was like,
it's impressive.
Yeah, I mean, under the right conditions, they might be right there. And the team that we always forget about, Russell County, because they beat up on, I think it was Central Hardin, and Central Hardin has a pretty good baseball team, so they beat them, I think, over the weekend.
Yep.
And so, as we get closer, the district comes up in about 3 weeks, and we will carry the district on Nash 103.7 Nash Icon with Jay Turner on the call.
Yeah, and somebody.
Yeah. You've been out there with him before, haven't you? Mm-hmm. And we'll also carry the district softball tournament as well. So that's everybody get ready for that. It's not too far away. they'll have to work them around graduation again
Yes,
this year.
that's always an issue in the spring.
Yeah, it is. But anyway, so how do you kind of see the season shaping up so far?
No, I think you said it. I mean, it's if you just want to go historically, not historically, with the last 5 to 10 years, I think it's fair to say the Bowling Green District, the Franklin Logan District, and Russell County have been the best teams.
Yep.
And it seems like that has not changed at all.
Yeah.
Where our teams in this district fall, I think it's probably behind those. That's just kind of how it looks and how it's been played out so far this year.
Yeah.
Glasgow does seem like to have the best team in this district, and they've played pretty well. And they've played a good schedule. But I don't know if they've got a pitcher that you just can say, well, they're going to go out there and beat somebody 1-0 or 2-1, especially the teams I just listed.
Yeah.
And most of those teams have some pretty dominant pitchers. Even Warren East, who's got a losing record, has a dominant pitcher who's signed with Louisville, and it's projected to be a top draft pick this summer in the Hawks kid. So, I think our district has probably got the work cut out for them. You still want to get to the region and see what happens. It's always, you do what you can do. But, Bowling Green, Logan seems really good to me. And then, South Warren, Greenwood. And then, like we said, Franklin is obviously, if they're good enough to beat St. X, in a one-game situation, they're good enough to beat anybody.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you got the old Russell County, who always plays good baseball. Nobody around here knows them, plays against them until they show up in the region, and they normally can hit it, and they got a lot of arms.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting. The district tournament, I think, will be pretty interesting just because there's not a whole lot of gap between the 4 teams. Overall, there's not. So it could shape up, probably not as interesting as last year. They're not all going to finish 3-3. But anyway, it looks like it'll be a pretty interesting district tournament. Alyssa Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. When we come back, we're going to dive into some high school softball.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag on ESPN Radio 1230.
Well, John, the Barron County Trojanettes played in what can be considered a marquee game in the 4th region, I guess, in the middle of a season, when they played the Warren East Lady Raiders last week. And it was a good test, I think, for the Trojanettes just to measure themselves against the number 2 team in the state. On the bad side, I think everybody kind of figured out why there's a number 2 team in the state, because they beat Barron 12-0.
Yep. They did. Yeah, I've said all along that the gap was huge, and I'm not just saying it now. I said it at the very beginning. It's Warren East and everybody else.
Yeah.
Because of all the players they had coming back, including their pitcher.
Yeah, Katie Gardner.
And making the run to the state finals. I mean, and this is a program that's been building. It's been almost like a tidal wave they've been building for the last 5 years or so.
Yeah.
And you could see this coming. And East is still undefeated. I think they're 21-0. 21-0, and they jumped on Barron quick, 12-0, and they had I think 2 grand slams and a 3-run homer.
Yeah.
And Katie Gardner, the Warren East pitcher, it's. I think what's most alarming from the Barron perspective, it's not that they got to be 12-0 in 5 innings. Is they only got 1 hit and they struck out 13.
Yeah,
struck out 13 times. And listen, you're not going to beat Warren East 9-8. Barron's not.
No,
but they've got to be able to score.
Maybe nobody else either.
Well, no, that's all right. But you got to be able to score.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're going to beat East, it's got to be 2-1, 3-2, something like that.
Yeah.
And it was her rise ball gave us a lot of trouble, and we can't. That's most of the strikeouts were chasing her rise ball and so forth. The good news is if I get to play them again, that experience of not playing East but going against her.
Yeah,
it's kind of hard to replicate that unless you see it. Because
they always say, like, when in basketball, if a team is like a run and pressing kind of team, it's hard to practice at a rate to
I said that.
prepare for that.
In particular, I agree.
And so I would
Quickness.
say this. Yeah, I'd say the same thing though is true for a really
That'll
good
help.
pitcher, because you can, especially softball pitcher, because there's no way you can emulate that in practice.
It's more of an advantage to the hitter to see the pitcher,
Yeah.
than a pitcher to see the hitter.
Yeah.
And that's so that part will, that's the positive. The negative is, there's a big gap.
Mm-hmm.
Now, listen, I mean, it's one game, and when you play softball or whatever, baseball, you forget it and move on.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just one game. You play the next time, and it may not go that way. But East is by far the best team in the region.
Yeah.
And they arguably are the best team in the state. Them, Male.
Mm-hmm.
Male's really, really good too. But that was to give Barron credit. They came back and defeated Russellville 4-2. And Russellville was one of Barron's 3 losses was to Russellville.
Yeah.
So they turned the table and got a win on that one. And they got a doubleheader sweep of Warren Central on Saturday.
Yeah. So after the game, like against Warren East, what kind of message can Coach Murphy tell his team? I mean, you look at the score, but I'm guessing the basically it's like, okay, you knew they were one of the best teams in the state, if not the best team in the state. I mean, the players knew that.
Yep.
Going in, it's kind of like, do you tell them, okay, you've seen them now, you've seen it, now you know what to expect. If we get a chance and play them in a regional tournament,
Yeah,
we know what we can do or what they can do.
You got to forget it and move on. I mean, that's about all you can do. I mean, that's what I would say. I said, listen, it's one game, forget it, move on, and next time if we get a chance to play them, we'll at least we know that our favorite pitch is the rise ball.
Mm-hmm.
We cannot go after that. He strikes out 13 times. We'll have maybe a better approach on the mound. I think Barron made some mistakes and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
You just move on, and it happens sometimes it happens in baseball and softball where you can defeat a team one day and come back and defeat them the next, or lose to them the next day, and that's that's just the mindset, and hopefully that wasn't. It's a little different in baseball and softball. It's different from football. You can get demoralized in football.
Yeah.
And
there's a physical nature
That's
to
correct. In baseball and softball, you get beat 12-0, and it's not like you're hurt physically.
Yeah.
It's not like you're scared. It's just, heck, you got beat. You got overwhelmed. Okay, there should not be that same, I think, intimidation and fear factor.
Yeah.
At least it wasn't with me when I played.
Now, the Trojanettes get another good test today because they play South Warren, and South Warren's probably the second best team in that district. Although Greenwood has come back, they're back up as a top program.
Yeah, Greenwood beat South Warren last week too.
Yeah, but
South Warren's good; they can really hit.
Yeah,
and the Trojanettes have Allen County tomorrow,
right?
Who they handled pretty easily a couple weeks ago at Allen.
Yeah,
but it's one game,
right? So, I mean, but the South Warren, when you're looking at that 14th district, and here's the fact. I just, like you said earlier, I mean, Warren East, it's Warren East and everybody else in the 4th region.
Yes.
And I don't care what everybody's record is compared to Warren East or whatever. If Warren East was 16-5, that would still be true.
Yes.
Not just that they're 21-0.
They are the prohibited,
yeah,
overwhelming, on April 30th favorite to win the region.
Yeah. And so, but the South Warren team has been the only team that, it's been Warren East and South Warren basically at the top of the region for the last 3 or 4 years. Allen's been close and Barron's been close, but they've still been the top two.
Yes.
So I guess maybe for a mental step for the Trojanettes, if you can beat South Warren, that's probably a good thing.
It is, because South Warren has won the region 2 straight years. Not last year, but they won 2 out of the last 3. They've lost a lot of players. They lost Kelsey Nunn, who's pitching at Western, among other players. So they've lost a lot of players, but they're competitive, and they've got a good record, and it would be it'd be arguably Barron's best win of the year if they can knock off South Warren.
Yeah, because right now, I mean, their best challenge has kind of been Russellville in a way, and
they don't have quite the same marquee name, I think, as South Warren.
Yeah, and it's a little bit odd because, I mean, I think Russellville has now lost to Logan County and Franklin Simpson in their own district, in 13th district.
Yep.
They just seem to cause the Trojanettes some problems.
Well, they won 18 games.
Yeah, I mean, they're not bad.
No.
But they also seem to cause Barron some problems. Meanwhile, Glasgow played a bunch of games last week, a bucket full of games.
6. I counted them. 6.
6 games.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, and the first 3 were, man, they had to feel bad about those 3 losses.
Yeah, especially when you're 4-16.
Yeah.
Anytime you get close and you have an opportunity to win, you want to win.
Right.
Because they lost to Russellville 5-4,
which had beaten them the week before 11-1.
Lost to Grayson 8-7. Lost to Allen 6-5.
Yeah.
And close games the whole way, and and then this past weekend, Friday and Saturday, they faced 3 good teams. North Hardin's good, lost 11-6, and then lost to South Warren 11-1 and Greenwood 14-3 in the same day. That's a tough doubleheader.
Yeah.
So they may they don't have a whole lot of depth. It may have a little fatigue at the end of the week, but boy, you take those first 3. If you gave them 3 wins, 7-13 looks a lot better than 4-16. So they got close and they deserve a couple wins this week.
Yeah, and they are struggling. They have just enough players at the moment. Glasgow does, and they're having a hard time just keeping the scores down. They're just struggling to get outs and that kind of thing.
Yes.
And those 3 1-run losses were all similar in the sense that I think they had a chance to win all 3 of them, and they just couldn't close the door.
That's correct.
And so you mentioned the week that's coming up for them. I mean, they play at Russell County today, and then they play at Adair tomorrow, and then Thursday they host Adair, and then Friday they play at Somerset. So they have 4 more games this week. So they're packing the schedule full.
Adair it's a program they have an opportunity to win.
Yeah.
It will not be easy at Somerset. And it will not be easy. Where are they going tonight? Did you say?
Russell County.
That won't be easy either.
Yeah, they get to face Addison Loy on the diamond instead of on the basketball court, because I think she's considered one of the top players in the 4th region. Addison Loy is, isn't she?
I don't know.
Okay. I think she's been recognized for, I don't remember what it was in the preseason.
I've not seen them play, so I couldn't tell you that. They did knock off Barron earlier, 8-7.
Yeah.
It's one of Barron's 3 losses.
Right. So, solid program. Usually is a solid program. Meanwhile, back to the 4th region thing and how the tournaments are shaping up, or the district, Barron's going to be the number 1 seed.
Yes.
I don't know. I guess Allen right now is the number 2, and then Monroe's 3.
I think that's the way.
Glasgow's in the 4th slot at the moment.
That's correct.
So, and we got a couple of games left for everybody in the district, so we'll see how that shapes out. But I would be surprised if it doesn't we wind up with Glasgow and Barron playing in the first round of the district tournament.
Allen and Monroe. It seems like that's the path.
Yeah. List Brown Sports Bag brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow. We'll be right back.
Presented by McDonald's of Glasgow, it's back to the studio with James and John, the Brown Sports Bag on ESPN Radio 1230.
Well, John, tis the season, as we mentioned in the intro, that there will be coaching changes all across high schools in the state of Kentucky. A lot of it has to do with teaching positions, and I think, real quick, I want to explain this to people, or have you explain it to them probably, how the coaching thing actually works in high school sports these days, because a lot of people think that schools hire coaches, and it doesn't really work that way. It works that way if they can make it work that way, meaning they have a position open that fits the need, and that coach can fill that teaching position, which is why I think we've seen a lot of school districts going the way of using the paraprofessional coaches, a lot of them who've coming off the AAU circuit and that kind of stuff.
Or retired.
I mean, we saw a lot of those in the last year or two.
That's popular because you don't have to find a teaching position.
Yeah, I mean, it's a real challenge these days to just fill a coaching position.
And they're all one-year contracts.
Yes, that's right. And which is why every spring, it's the coaching carousel season, really. Because it depends on what the school district needs as a teacher and then how they're going to fill that need as a coach.
That's exactly right.
And so whenever we see these coaching changes, like last year, we had Gary DeWitt took the boys' position at Monroe County, and
retired.
He obviously did it. Yeah, he had retired.
Lex Lindsay went back to Franklin.
Yep, Lex Lindsay, also a retired former coach.
Greg Dunn, retired coach and principal, went to Allen County girls.
Yep. So, I mean, we saw some of that. Now, DeWitt, I guess he was doing that just for the 1 year.
He was.
And then they've hired Ashley Geralds, who's a Monroe County guy.
Yes, he's from Monroe. He helped Gary last year.
Yep.
He was the boys' head coach at Greene County several years ago, too. So he does have head coaching experience.
I didn't know about that part.
Yeah, but Ashley is born and raised in Monroe County.
Yep. So they got one of their own, finally, to take that position. And, that's going to be, I think, probably a challenge, I think
it's fair
for next year, because it looks like Barron will be ahead in that district. I think Allen County will be pretty good.
Well, Glasgow should be loaded.
Glasgow will, health wise, if they're all healthy, Glasgow will be good.
Yeah.
So the other three might be pretty good next year.
Right.
Even though Allen lost some key players, they still had some younger guys.
Had some good
coming
sophomores.
back.
Good sophomores. Right.
So it'll be a challenge in that district for Ashley. That'll be a good a good return home for him, I suppose.
It's never easy to coach in your hometown, though.
No. And to that end, I mean, you mentioned when we were off air, I mean, there's a turnover in Taylor County.
Yeah, Campbellsville, first of all, longtime head coach Tim Davis, who won a state title actually at Marion County.
Yeah.
He's been coaching in Campbellsville High School for 25 years. He got out, and the girls' coach was Anthony Epps, former UK basketball point guard, played for Rick Pitino.
Yep.
Is taking that job over.
Yeah, I think Epps was also an assistant on the girls' team at Marion County.
He was.
When they won the state title.
His daughter played. That's correct. Mm-hmm.
And so, that's probably pretty good name grab there, although he was already at Campbellsville, right?
He's been the girls' coach the last 2 years.
Yeah. And then, of course, Taylor County, they also got a new boys coach. Seems like they're getting a new one every year.
That's 4 and 5 years.
Yeah.
I'll just say that. Yeah. And last year, Jeff Gunn filled in as the interim, got him all the way to the finals of the region.
Right.
He filled in because the head coach left the week before. I think his name was May Stallworth left.
Yeah.
So and they just filled it with a former Taylor County player, Montrell Irvin.
Yep.
Who was head coach at Marion County. So now Marion County's open.
Yeah.
Which traditionally is a good job.
Yeah, they've had some pretty good teams there in Marion
State
County.
titles, yep.
Yep. And then the Metcalfe County girls position is open because a few weeks ago Josh Hurt took
he took a job at the central office.
Yep. And
that's a good job.
It is a good job.
Good talent.
Yeah, and I would suspect I don't know what the hiring process is for them, but I mean I would suspect one of your former players might. I mean, I don't know if TJ is interested in being a head coach. Looks like she is.
Yep.
She helped you for a little while at first, right, before she went over to Metcalfe County?
Yeah, she helped me for, I think, 3 years.
Yeah.
She'd be a really good coach.
Yeah.
Played at Campbellsville, point guard, great player.
Yep. So she's TJ Coffey now. She
That's correct.
was Thomas.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, those are some positions that are open in the area. And there'll be more. We'll get to see more of these as
it always filters out. People will retire or whatever, or move on, and you just April, May. You don't know.
Yeah, that's always like the back burner to whatever's going on in the spring sports.
That's exactly right.
And then meanwhile, in the college ranks, the WKU Hilltoppers picked up a couple of transfers in the last couple of weeks.
Boy, it is the season. College basketball is and college football with quarterbacks. I mean, it's transfer city.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, and once they allow that graduate transfers, I mean, it is open. It's like the opposite one and done. From the other end.
It's 5 and done.
Yeah, that's right. It's the other end. I think they got two good players.
Yeah,
I mean the point guard, starting point guard for Lipscomb.
Yeah, Kenny Cooper.
He's a heck of a player.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's really, really good, and he'll come in, and I think he will really stabilize. He's exactly what they need.
Yeah,
I mean, their problems last year, other than just general chemistry problems with all the suspensions, was lack of point guard play or consistent point guard play, and he'll bring. Maturity. Lipscomb is like Belmont. They were very, very mature team, and he's a good shooter, which they desperately need too.
Yeah.
I think that's a great signing.
Yeah, and
he was freed up because his coach left from Lipscomb and took the Belmont job.
Yeah, and the other thing is you mentioned what they need. The other thing is. They haven't really had a point guard. I mean, Bearden was, but because he missed the first, month and a half of the season.
He was a shoot-first guy, too.
Yeah, he was. I mean, this guy apparently is not that guy. And then the other guy they get will be Cameron Justice, who won't be immediately eligible to play. Now, I think Kenny Cooper might be. I think they are trying to make sure that he can play next year.
I think he is. That's correct.
And there was I saw some discussion about that. I don't know if that's 100% that he will be able to, but I think he might be able to come straight in and play. There was some extenuating circumstance. I don't remember what that was.
Coach left. I don't know if I said
well, I mean, that should be, right?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe for a bunch of players, in this, the coach left or get indicted by the feds or whatever.
Cameron Justice is an interesting player. I mean, he was a former – it gives Western 3 Kentucky basketballs.
Yeah. They have him, Tavion Hollingsworth, and Carson Williams, who had transferred from Northern Kentucky last year.
That's correct. And Cameron started off with he played at Vanderbilt. He's played every single game his freshman year, played for Coach Stallings, and then they had a coaching change, I believe, and he played I think he transferred out after like 6 games of his sophomore year, and he's been at is it IUPI?
Yeah, that's it.
In Indiana, and he comes in. I think is he a grad transfer? I mean, he's been.
He could be.
I think he's a
sure.
grad transfer too, and he's a really good shooter. About 6'2". He averaged like 30 a game while he was in high school in Kentucky. And another player that kind of seems like fills a niche that they need, outside shooting.
Yeah, and then that includes. I mean, they have Isaiah Coatsart coming in, who was a Mr. Basketball candidate in Kentucky.
Carson Williams is a really good player. Now he's not an outside shooter.
He's a Justin Johnson before he developed an outside shot.
One. Yeah, but he's only 6'4", 6'5", but he can jump out of the gym and super strong. But
he's real explosive.
But he's not a 3-point shooter.
Yeah.
Now, I saw an interview with him, and that's what he worked on for a whole year. So maybe he's increased his range, but that's not. He's really kind of an explosive. Played on the post a lot, but he can handle the ball some too.
Yeah.
He's a winner. I'll just say that.
Yeah,
he gets things done, even though he's not known to be an outside shooter.
He's the equivalent of what used to be a small power forward,
right?
And these days that role doesn't exist very much even in college basketball. Even.
And speaking of Northern, Darren Horn.
That's right. He's back from
Darren Horn, who was he did a great job at Western.
Yeah,
I mean, you're talking about playing fast and exciting, and some of the he was really, really good for his 4 or 5 years at Western.
Yeah.
And he left to go to South Carolina, and it didn't work out for there. And he
lost. I wonder if he doesn't regret that move to some degree.
I guarantee he does. And he's went into TV for a while.
Yeah.
And the last 3 years, I think he's been at the University of Texas as Coach Smart.
Yeah.
Yeah, his assistant. So he's landed at Northern.
Yeah, Northern is an interesting program because they've been in Division I of college basketball for 3 years.
Made the tournament twice.
Well, I guess 4 years. The first year they didn't play a conference.
John
schedule.
Brannon, their head coach, took the Cincinnati job.
Yeah, and so then that opened the door for Horn to go there, and that seems like a perfect coach to hire and a perfect fit. And I mean, we basically right now have 4. Even though Western, I would say, underachieved this past year, right now we had 4 programs with, I would say, premier coaches running them.
Yeah.
As far as recruiting. Now,
are you including Murray?
Well, you're right. I did not include Murray, so I guess that's 5.
Right.
Now, because even though you can look and say John Morant put them on the map, but that's not true. They had Isaiah Cannon before then. They've had several good players come through Murray.
And every coach they hire there does well.
Yes.
They move on, but they do well.
Yeah, so I mean, we've got some great coaches being picked up. In the case of Stansbury and Horn, they've been there before in terms of like having coached before at a high level. In Murray, they're kind of a feeder program for coaches at the moment. But we keep bringing in coaches in this state that can recruit players and get them in. And I think the most interesting thing to me, it looked like Northern Kentucky was doing this, like bringing in a bunch of Kentucky players. But Stansbury has a ton of Kentucky kids on his roster.
He really does. I mean, it's a kind of a interesting collection where he'll go out and get a 5-star.
Yeah.
But almost half his roster is Kentucky kids.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting how he's kind of done that, which I think it's smart, actually.
Yeah, because fans recognize the names, and that energizes them to show up for the games. And that's got to be the most important thing in a lot of ways, because if they can get to when you show up at Diddle Arena hard to beat at home, that's going to be really important for the program, because if you can win your home games and you can still
And they
break
didn't
even
last year. That's right. They struggled at home.
Yeah, which was that was the most surprising part, because
Had
the year
good
before
crowd.
they actually were really good at
They
home.
really did. That's right.
And so, that's going to be very important for the program going forward. And then I'm sure that helps in the recruiting process
question
too.
about
The
it.
kids show up for the games and they're like, "Oh wow, this
No
place is
question.
really pumped." So it looks like things are going pretty well there. Real quick on the college basketball front, these these federal trials are still going on, and I'm still mesmerized
The only
by the
person-
names that are dropping out of this
The
thing.
only person's paid the price is Louisville and Rick Pitino.
Yeah. And I just think, like we said last week, a lot of these universities are sitting on potential lawsuits. They're just going to wait and see how it pans out before they take any action.
Yep.
We'll be back next week at 4 p.m. Brown Sports Bag, brought to you by McDonald's of Glasgow.
Thanks for listening, and be sure and join James and John once again next Monday at 4 for the Brown Sports Bag, a local weekly sports machine presented by McDonald's of Glasgow.
This is WCDS Glasgow, ESPN Radio 1230, your total sports leader.